Welcome to Snoozecast, the podcast designed to help you fall asleep. On Snoozecast, we read excerpts from public domain works and occasionally original stories. We'd like to thank our listeners. If you enjoy our show, please review us on Apple Podcasts and also share it with a friend. The best place to listen to us is on our website, snoozecast.com. That way, you can play a single episode and fall asleep without another one automatically playing. This episode is brought to you by crossing all the items off your to-do list. Tonight, we read from Flatland, written in 1884 by Edwin Abbott, under the pseudonym A Square. The book used the fictional two-dimensional world of Flatland to comment on the hierarchy of Victorian culture. The novella's more enduring contribution is its examination of dimensions. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. Section 1 of the nature of Flatland. I call our world Flatland, not because we call it so, but to make its nature clearer to you, my happy readers, who are privileged to live in space. Imagine a vast sheet of paper on which straight lines, triangles, squares, pentagons, hexagons, and other figures, instead of remaining fixed in their places, move freely about, on or in the surface, but without the power of rising above or sinking below it, very much like shadows, only hard and with luminous edges, and you will have then a pretty correct notion of my country and countrymen. Alas, a few years ago, I should have said my universe, but now my mind has been opened to higher views of things. In such a country, you will perceive at once that it is impossible that there should be anything of what you call a solid kind. But I dare say you will suppose that we could at least distinguish by sight the triangles, squares, and other figures moving about as I have described them. On the contrary, we could see nothing of the kind, not at least so as to distinguish one figure from another. Nothing was visible, nor could be visible to us, except straight lines, and the necessity of this I will speedily demonstrate. Place a penny on the middle of one of your tables in space, and leaning over it, look down upon it. It will appear a circle. But now, drawing back to the edge of the table, gradually lower your eye, thus bringing yourself more and more into the condition of the inhabitants of Flatland, and you will find the penny becoming more and more oval to your view. And at last, when you have placed your eye exactly on the edge of the table, so that you are, as it were, actually a Flatlander, the penny will then have ceased to appear oval at all, and will have become, so far as you can see, a straight line. The same thing would happen if you were to treat in the same way a triangle or square or any other figure cut out of pasteboard. As soon as you look at it with your eye on the edge on the table, you will find that it ceases to appear to you a figure, and that it becomes in appearance a straight line. Take, for example, an equilateral triangle, who represents with us a tradesman of the respectable class. Figure 1 represents the tradesman as you would see him while you were bending over from above. Figures 2 and 3 represent the tradesman as you would see him if your eye were close to the level, or all but on the level of the table, and if your eye were quite on the level of the table, and that is how we see him in Flatland, you would see nothing but a straight line. When I was in Spaceland, I heard that your sailors have very similar experiences while they traverse your seas and discern some distant island or coast lying on the horizon. The far-off land may have bays, forelands, angles in and out to any number and extent, yet at a distance you see none of these, unless indeed your sun shines bright upon them, revealing the projections and retirements by means of light and shade. Nothing but a gray, unbroken line upon the water. Well, that is just what we see when one of our triangular or other acquaintances comes toward us in Flatland. As there is neither sun with us nor any light of such kind as to make shadows, we have none of the helps to the sight that you have in Spaceland. If our friend comes closer to us and we see his line becomes larger, if he leaves us, it becomes smaller, but still he looks like a straight line, be he triangle, square, pentagon, hexagon, circle, what you will. A straight line he looks, and nothing else. You may perhaps ask how, under these disadvantageous circumstances, we are able to distinguish our friends from one another. But the answer to this very natural question will be more fitly and easily given when I come to describe the inhabitants of Flatland. For the present, let me defer this subject and say a word or two about the climate and houses in our country. Section 2 of the climate and houses in Flatland. As with you, so also with us, there are 4 points of the compass: north, south, east, and west. There being no sun nor other heavenly bodies, it is impossible for us to determine the north in the usual way, but we have a method of our own. By a law of nature with us, there is a constant attraction to the south, and although in temperate climates this is very slight, so that even a woman in reasonable health can journey several furlongs northward without much difficulty, yet the hampering effect of the southward attraction is quite sufficient to serve as a compass in most parts of our earth. Moreover, the rain, which falls at stated intervals, coming always from the north, is an additional assistance. And in the towns we have the guidance of the houses, which of course have their side walls running for the most part north and south, so that the roofs may keep off the rain from the north. In the country, where there are no houses, the trunks of the trees serve as some sort of guide. Altogether, we have not so much difficulty as might be expected in determining our bearings. Yet, in our more temperate regions in which the southward attraction is hardly felt, walking sometimes in a perfectly desolate plain where there have been no houses nor trees to guide me, I have been occasionally compelled to remain stationary for hours together, waiting till the rain came before continuing my journey. On the weak and aged, and especially on females, the force of attraction tells much more heavily than on the robust of the male sex, so that it is point of breeding. If you meet a lady in the street, always to give her the north side of the way. By no means an easy thing to do always at short notice when you are in rude health and in a climate where it is difficult to tell your north from your south. Windows there are none in our houses, for the light comes to us alike in our homes and out of them, by day and by night, equally at all times and in all places whence we know not. It was in old days, with our learned men, an interesting and oft investigated question. What is the origin of light? And the solution of it has been repeatedly attempted, with no other result than to crowd our lunatic asylums with the would-be solvers. Hence, after fruitless attempts to suppress such investigations indirectly by making them liable to a heavy tax, the legislator, in comparatively recent times, absolutely prohibited them. I, alas, alone in Flatland, know now only too well the true solution of this mysterious problem. But my knowledge cannot be made intelligible to a single one of my countrymen, and I am mocked at. I, the sole possessor of the truths of space, and of the theory of the introduction of light from the world of 3 dimensions, as if I were the maddest of the mad. But a truce to these painful digressions. Let me return to our houses. The most common form for the construction of a house is a 5-sided or pentagonal, as in the annexed figure. The 2 northern sides, RO, OF, constitute the roof, and for the most part have no doors. On the east is a small door for the women, on the west a much larger one for the men. The south side, or floor, is usually doorless. Square and triangular houses are not allowed, and for this reason the angles of a square, and still more those of an equilateral triangle, being much more pointed than those of a pentagon, and the lines of inanimate objects, such as houses, being dimmer than the lines of men and women, it follows that there is no little danger lest the points of a square or triangular house residence might do serious injury to an inconsiderate or perhaps absent-minded traveler, suddenly therefore running against them. And as early as the 11th century of our era, triangular houses were universally forbidden by law, the only exceptions being fortifications, powder magazines, barracks, and other state buildings, which it is not desirable that the general public should approach without circumspection. At this period, square houses were still everywhere permitted, though discouraged by a special tax. But about 3 centuries afterwards, the law decided that in all towns containing a population above 10,000, the angle of a pentagon was the smallest house angle that could be allowed consistently with the public safety. The good sense of the community has seconded the efforts of the legislator, and now, even in the country, the pentagonal construction has superseded every other. It is only now and then in some very remote and backward agricultural district that an antiquarian may still discover a square house. Section 3. Concerning the inhabitants of Flatland. The greatest length or breadth of a full-grown inhabitant of Flatland may be estimated at about 11 of your inches. 12 inches may be regarded as a maximum. Our women are straight lines. Our soldiers and lowest class of workmen are triangles with 2 equal sides, each about 11 inches long, and a base or third side so short, often not exceeding half an inch, that they form at their vertices a very sharp and formidable angle. Indeed, when their bases are of the most degraded type, not more than the 1/8 part of an inch in size, they can hardly be distinguished from straight lines. So extremely pointed are their vertices. With us, as with you, these triangles are distinguished from others by being called isosceles, and by this name I shall refer to them in the following pages. Our middle class consists of equilateral or equal-sided triangles. Our professional men and gentlemen are squares, to which class I myself belong, and 5-sided figures or pentagons. Next above these come the nobility, of whom there are several degrees, beginning at 6-sided figures or hexagons, and from thence rising in the number of their sides till they receive the honorable title of polygonal or many-sided. Finally, when the number of the sides becomes so numerous and the sides themselves so small that the figure cannot be distinguished from a circle, he is included in the circular or priestly order, and this is the highest class of all. It is a law of nature with us that a male child shall have one or more side than his father, so that each generation shall rise, as a rule, one step in the scale of development and nobility. Thus, the son of a square is a pentagon, and the son of a pentagon a hexagon, and so on. But this rule applies not always to the tradesmen, and still less often to the soldiers and to the workmen, who indeed can hardly be said to deserve the name of human figures, since they have not all their sides equal. With them, therefore, the law of nature does not hold, and the son of an isosceles, i.e., a triangle with 2 sides equal, remains isosceles still. Nevertheless, all hope is not shut out, even from the isosceles, that his posterity may ultimately rise above his degraded condition. For, after a long series of military successes or diligent and skillful labors, it is generally found that the more intelligent among the artisan and soldier classes manifest a slight increase of their third side or base, and a shrinkage of the 2 other sides. Intermarriages, arranged by the priests, between the sons and daughters of these more intellectual members of the lower class generally result in an offspring approximating still more to the type of the equal-sided triangle. Rarely, in proportion to the vast numbers of isosceles births, is a genuine and certifiable equal-sided triangle produced from isosceles parents. Note, what need of a certificate, a Spaceland critic may ask? Is not the procreation of a square son a certificate from nature herself, proving the equal-sidedness of the father? I reply that no lady of any position will marry an uncertified triangle. Square offspring has sometimes resulted from a slightly irregular triangle, but in almost every such case, the irregularity of the first generation is visited on the third, which either fails to attain the pentagonal rank or relapses to the triangular. Such birth requires, as its antecedents, not only a series of carefully arranged intermarriages, but also a long, continued exercise of frugality and self-control on the part of the would-be ancestors of the coming equilateral, and a patient, systematic, and continuous development of the isosceles intellect through many generations. The birth of a true equilateral triangle from isosceles parents is the subject of rejoicing in our country for many furlongs around. After a strict examination conducted by the Sanitary and Social Board, the infant, if certified as regular, is with solemn ceremonial admitted into the class of equilaterals. He is then immediately taken from his proud yet sorrowing parents and adopted by some childless equilateral, who is bound